All right. So have you ever had like this amazing book idea,
Yeah.
like just brewing in your mind?
Oh, yeah.
But then the thought of like actually sitting down and writing the whole thing,
It can be.
it's a little
Good
daunting.
feeling.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to be looking at today in this deep dive.
Okay.
We are checking out how to write a book in 7 days without overwhelming yourself.
All right.
Now, I know what you might be
7
thinking.
days.
7 days, right?
It's not even possible.
A lot of people think
That's
that.
yeah, and you know what?
It's a bold claim.
It is a bold claim.
It is.
But even if you're not trying to, like, break some kind of land speed record for book writing, I think there are actually some really, really practical tips in the source that we can all use.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So let's jump right in.
Okay.
Day 1 is all about planning.
Planning.
Which, it might be tempting to just, like, dive right into the writing.
Right, to get going.
Get those words.
Get it out. But the source really, really emphasizes the importance of taking the time to plan first. Have you found that to be true in, like, your writing process?
Oh, absolutely. Without a plan, you can get lost really easily. I always think of it like setting off on a road trip, but you don't have a map and you don't even know where you're going.
Right.
You might end up somewhere interesting, but it's probably going to take you a lot longer and...
Yeah, you're going to waste a lot of gas.
You're going to waste a lot of gas. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so let's break it down then. In terms of, like, book writing, what are some, like, essential elements of a solid plan?
Well, first off, you have to figure out who you're writing this book for.
Okay.
What are their interests, their needs? What are they hoping to get out of this book?
So your target audience, basically.
Your target audience, exactly.
Okay.
And then you have to get clear on what your main point is.
Yeah.
What's the core message that you want your readers to take away?
Okay.
Once you have those two things, then you can start outlining the structure of the book and, like, mapping out the chapters.
Okay, so this actually makes me think of something that I struggle with sometimes.
What's that?
I feel like I have, like, too many ideas.
Okay.
And I don't know which ones to focus on.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever run into that kind of, like, creative overwhelm?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think a lot of creative people deal with that.
Yeah.
One thing I like to do is just brainstorm all my ideas, and then I try to group them into themes or categories.
Okay.
That helps me see, like, the bigger picture, and then I can see which ideas are the strongest and which ones I should maybe save for a different project.
That's a really cool tip.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And, it kind of reminds me of that whole, like, kill your darlings advice.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you got to let go of an idea, even if you're, like, really attached to it.
Exactly. And sometimes, those darlings can live on in a different project.
Right.
You're not getting rid of them for good.
Right. It's just not the right time or the right place for this particular project.
Exactly.
Okay, so for all you listeners out there, I want to hear from you. What's a book that you would love to write?
Oh, yeah.
And who would be, like, your ideal reader for that book?
Good question.
Yeah, tell us in the comments below. We love hearing about all the creative projects that you guys are working on.
It's so inspiring.
Okay, so moving on to day 2.
Right.
The source is all about setting realistic goals.
Okay.
What's your take on that?
I think it's crucial for any big project, and especially something like writing a book. If you set unrealistic expectations, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment.
Totally. I think that happens to me a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we avoid that then?
Well, I think it's all about breaking down that big goal into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
The source talks about, like, setting daily word counts.
Okay.
Or maybe you dedicate a certain amount of time to writing each day. Have you tried those?
I have. I've done the daily word count thing, and I find that it really, really helps me.
Yeah.
To stay consistent, because even if I can only get, like, 500 words in a day,
right,
it's still something.
It's still moving forward.
And it makes me feel like I'm making progress.
Yeah, I totally get that.
What about you? Do you have any, like, tips for setting realistic writing goals?
For me, it's more about time blocking.
Okay.
Like, I'll actually block out time in my calendar, like it's an important meeting.
Yeah.
And that helps me make sure that I'm actually prioritizing the writing.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting how, we both have different approaches.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about finding what works for you.
Absolutely.
Right. So for all of you listening out there, have you faced a similar situation in your own work?
Yeah, let us know.
How do you break down large tasks?
Tell us in the comments.
Yeah. We want to hear from you.
Right.
All right. So we've talked about planning. We've talked about goal setting. But day 3 brings us something new and I think pretty interesting.
Oh, what's that?
It's tools and resources.
Ooh, tool.
Yes. What's your take on using tools to help with your writing?
I think think especially with the rise of AI writing tools these days,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really interesting conversation to be having.
Yeah, and I think some writers might feel a little hesitant about it.
Yeah.
You know, like, is it cheating to use AI
Right.
to help you write?
Exactly.
But personally, I find that they can be really helpful.
I agree. It's all about shifting your perspective
Oh, wow.
and thinking of these tools as assistants,
Yeah,
not replacements for you as the writer.
absolutely. I think that's key.
Yeah.
Because they can help us with things like grammar.
Hmm.
They can help us come up with ideas. They can even help us structure our writing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's still our voice and our ideas that are driving the whole process.
Exactly.
Okay, so the source specifically mentions a couple of tools.
Oh, which ones?
Scrivener
Okay.
and Microsoft Word.
Those are classics.
Yeah, and I think both of them can be super helpful for, like, organizing your thoughts,
Right.
managing all your revisions, and ultimately just, like, getting your book ready to go.
Yeah, totally. And, they don't have to be like fancy or expensive either. Even just using like a note-taking app
Yeah,
or some mind mapping software can be really helpful.
totally. Okay, so this brings us to day 4, which is all about time management.
Time management.
The source says it's really important to dedicate consistent time to writing,
Hmm.
even if it's just for like an hour a day.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think consistency is so much more important than trying to like
Right.
cram a whole bunch of writing into one day.
Right.
It's much better to do a little bit each day.
Yes, like working out or
Yeah.
learning a new language.
Totally.
Those short, consistent bursts of effort,
Yeah,
they really add up
they do.
over time.
Much more so than like
Right.
those big marathon sessions.
And it's not just about the quantity of time.
Right.
It's also about the quality of time. So the source also talks about like creating a dedicated writing space
Okay.
that's free from distractions.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that's so important because it's so easy to get distracted these days.
Oh my gosh, yes.
With our phones and our computers, it's
Um,
like there's always something vying for our attention.
Exactly. And I think having that dedicated space, even if it's just like a corner in your house or a
Right.
certain coffee shop that you like to go to,
Yeah.
it just helps your brain to kind of switch into that writing mode.
It signals it's time to focus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us, listeners,
Yeah.
what does your ideal writing environment look like?
Yeah. Where do you go to get those creative juices flowing?
Share in the comments.
Yeah. All right. Day 5 is about finding the balance
Okay.
between writing and editing.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is.
And the source says, don't try to be perfect in the first draft.
Oh, the first draft?
What do you think about that?
I think that's really good advice because it's so easy to get caught up in editing every sentence
Right.
as you go.
Yes.
But that can really slow you down and kill your momentum.
Yeah, I feel like if I try to edit as I go,
Yeah.
I just end up second-guessing myself, and I'm like,
Right.
ugh, this is terrible.
And you lose that flow.
I totally lose the flow.
Yeah.
So is it better to just, like, ignore all the typos and the grammar mistakes?
I think it depends on the writer.
Okay.
Some people really need to get everything perfect before they can move on.
Right.
Other people are more comfortable just like getting the ideas out there and then going back and cleaning things up later.
So it's really about, like, knowing yourself
Exactly.
and how you work best.
Self-awareness.
Okay, so
Mhm.
listeners,
Yeah.
what's your approach to editing?
Do you like to clean up as you go?
Or do you save it all for the end?
Tell us in the comments.
Yeah, we want to know.
Okay. So moving on to day 6.
Okay.
This is all about reviewing and revising and getting feedback from other people.
Feedback.
Yes. Why do you think feedback is so important?
I think it's so valuable to get an outside perspective on your work
Mm-hmm.
because when you're the one writing it, you're just so close to it.
Yeah, you're too close to
You
it.
can't see it objectively.
Right. And someone else can come in with fresh eyes.
Right.
And point out things that you might have missed.
Yeah, like maybe there are parts that are confusing,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you need to clarify certain things.
Exactly.
Have you ever received feedback that like totally changed the direction of a project?
Oh, absolutely. Earlier in my writing career,
Yeah.
I got some feedback on a manuscript that was really tough to hear,
Okay.
but it made the book so much better.
Wow.
Yeah, it made me realize that I needed to
Mhm.
let go of my ego a little bit and
Right.
be open to hearing what other people had to say.
Yeah, I think that's such a good lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get defensive when someone criticizes our work.
Right.
But we have to remember that feedback is a gift,
It is.
even when it's hard to hear.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to be thoughtful about who you're getting feedback from.
Okay.
You want to choose people who are knowledgeable and supportive.
Right, the people that you trust.
Yes, people who are going to give you honest feedback.
Yeah, and I think it's also helpful to get feedback from a variety of people.
Right.
Like people who have different backgrounds and perspectives.
Yeah, that can give you a more well-rounded view.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so listeners,
Yeah.
we want to hear from you.
Have you ever gotten feedback
That, like, totally improved your writing.
that made you think about things in a new way?
Tell us about it in the comments.
It's really fascinating to see how different people react to the same piece of writing.
Yeah, and speaking of connecting with readers, that brings us to day 7.
Day 7.
Publishing.
Okay.
This can feel like a whole other beast, especially for first-time authors.
It can be daunting, yeah, but it's also like the most exciting part.
Right, because this is where you get to share your work with the world.
Exactly. All that hard work is finally going to pay off.
So let's break down the publishing process a little bit.
Yeah.
What are some key things that listeners should know?
Well, the source talks about formatting cover design and choosing a publishing platform.
Okay, so let's start with formatting. Why is that so important?
Well, think about it. When you pick up a book,
Yeah.
you want it to look good.
Right.
You want it to be easy to read.
Easy to navigate.
Exactly. If the formatting is all messed up, it can be really distracting.
Yeah, it just makes the book look unprofessional.
Right. And it can even make it harder for people to understand what you're trying to say.
It's like the difference between a handwritten note and a professionally printed letter.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Like the content might be the same, but the presentation just elevates the whole thing.
Totally. All right, so next up we have cover design.
Cover design.
Now they say don't judge a book by its cover.
Right, but we all do it.
But we all do it. The cover is the first thing people see.
It's the first impression.
Exactly. So you want to make sure it's a good one.
So what makes a good book cover?
Well, it needs to be eye-catching, of course.
Okay.
It needs to be relevant to the genre of the book.
Right.
And it needs to appeal to your target audience.
Yeah, and there are so many talented cover designers out there these days.
There are.
It's amazing to see what they can come up with.
It really is.
All right, so listeners, what about you?
Yeah.
Have you ever been drawn to a book?
Just because of the cover?
Tell us about it in the comments.
Okay, last but not least, we have choosing a publishing platform.
Ooh, yeah, this could be a tough one.
It can be, especially with so many options these days.
So how do you decide which path to take?
I think it really comes down to your goals as an author.
Yeah.
What are your priorities?
Like, do you want to go the traditional publishing route?
Right. Or do you want to self-publish?
And there are pros and cons to both approaches.
Definitely.
Traditional publishing can give you a wider reach, but it can also be a long and competitive process.
Yeah, whereas self-publishing gives you more control. And you get to keep a larger share of the profits.
But you also have to do a lot more of the work yourself.
Right, like marketing and distribution.
So there's no right or wrong answer.
Nope.
It's about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. And it's worth doing your research.
Yeah, definitely.
So even though this source is all about writing a book in 7 days,
Right.
it's important to remember that that's just a framework.
Yeah, it's a starting point.
It's not a hard and fast rule.
And every book and every author is different.
Exactly.
So the main takeaway here is to not get overwhelmed,
Right.
to break down the process into smaller steps.
And just start writing.
Just start writing. I love that.
Don't let perfectionism hold you back.
Yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
That's so important.
There are resources available. There are people who can help.
And there's a whole community of writers out there
Yeah.
who are going through the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought. What's one small step
That you can take today.
to move your book idea forward?
It could be anything.
Write down some notes,
Brainstorm a title.
outline a chapter,
The key is to just take action.
even if it's a small action.
Right. Any step in the right direction is a good step.
All right, so that's it for this episode of The Deep Dive.
We hope you enjoyed it.
We hope you found this exploration of how to write a book in 7 days without overwhelming yourself helpful,
inspiring.
and motivating your story. Remember, the power to write your story is within you.
So go out there and create something amazing.
We'll see you next time.